Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Elizabeth Foster. I'm the president of NAWBO New York City. And today I have the great pleasure of speaking with an amazing lady who also happens to be on our board. Her name is Lina Stillman. So hi, Lina, welcome.
Elizabeth, hi. Thank you so much for the conversation this morning. So happy to be part of NAWBO and so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, we're really excited. And I'm so glad that I've got this opportunity to find out a little bit more about your business. Tell us who you are, what you do, tell us about your business. Tell us what you do.
So I'm an employment attorney. I've been doing employment law for really, since I graduated law school 10 years ago. I've been doing exclusively employment law. I worked for two big firms when I graduated law school, and about 6 years ago, I decided to open up my law firm, and just in response to the community's need for lawyers who spoke their language. So I have a lot of Portuguese speaking clients and I have a lot of Spanish speaking clients. We serve everybody really, but 6 years ago, I started my own law firm, and it's been great. It's been great helping working folk with their issues at work.
That's really great. And actually, speaking of which, I know that you've actually published a book fairly recently. So congrats on that. Tell us a little bit about the book.
So the book is I used to do a lot of, since I started my practice, I've done a lot of pamphlets, informational pamphlets in different aspects of my work. Published a little pamphlet about minimum wage, and I published a little pamphlet about discrimination, for example. And I just saw the book as an opportunity to put all of the questions that I've ever received, not all of them, but a great deal of them are there, of questions that I've received from my clients about what to do in case they have an issue at work with discrimination, with payment. So the book is meant to be just prophylactic, right? It's meant to be there for people to see before they get into any situation at work, what to do if something happens at work, what to do if they ever find themselves in a situation where they have to seek an employment attorney. So it's a compilation of questions that I've been asked by my clients over the years, and it's in one book, so it's great. It was meant to be a compilation of all the pamphlets that I've ever wanted to do in one book.
That's great. That's exciting. And what's it called? It's
called Knowing Your Rights, a guide for working people in New York. It's not meant for anybody other than people in New York. I don't practice law really anywhere else but New York. So the employment laws are very different in New Jersey, in Connecticut. So these are just employment laws in New York. So if you're a working person, if you're a person who has a boss, a person who works for somebody else, if you're an employee, really, this book is meant to, give some tips and guidance really on employment law issues.
Sounds like a really important book. So that's fantastic. So Lina, what actually inspired you to become a lawyer?
Being working class, Elizabeth, I come from a working class family. I was raised by a single mother, and I saw that my entire family, they got into legal trouble all the time and they could never afford an attorney. I wanted to go to law school and see what I could do to help people who couldn't afford a lawyer. So what I do now is I don't actually charge anyone for any money up front. I don't charge people for consultations. I don't charge people for anything. I only collect, my business works in a contingency basis. So if you don't have money, I will still represent you and I take care of the bill after the case is over. So it's a way for people to have great legal counsel who don't have the money to pay up front, to don't have the money to hire a really good attorney. So that's where I come in. I give people the best legal counsel that I can possibly give them, and the money never comes out of their pocket.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. That sounds like something that a lot of people, I'm sure, have benefited from over the years, and a very worthy attitude to have towards supporting people.
Yeah. But it was basically, seeing my family in their legal troubles is what inspired me ultimately.
Mm-hmm. So out of the work that you do, working with people in these different situations, what kind of gives you the most joy?
What gives me the most joy, Elizabeth, is seeing how giving people back their dignity that they thought they lost, whether they lost it or not. It's not, they think they lost a piece of themselves. at work with something that happened, and knowing that they can do something about it and that they can, just have their dignity back at the end of the process is what brings me the most joy. They feel that justice was done in a lot of, in their cases, if, we either go to trial or they get some money or they get an apology back from their employer, they feel like their dignity is theirs back. And that's really why I love doing what I do. As I know, we take work very seriously. People who have jobs think of it as, some people have their identity attached to their jobs. It's really interesting. And when something happens to them, it could be just as devastating as a divorce, for example. When I have conversations with my clients, it sounds like a divorce, like they're going through a divorce. So for me to see them, you just regain that back it's really, what really does it for me, what this is all about.
Yeah. It sounds like you do a good job in New York City and New York State, I'm sure, as well. So, Lina, what do you do when you're not working?
When I'm not working, I read a lot. I am part of 2 book clubs. I am also, as you mentioned before, I'm part of NAWBO. I love being part of NAWBO, and I love volunteering for causes that I feel are worthy. I'm part of 2 boards. I'm part of NAWBO, and I'm part of the Mixteca board, which is an organization in Brooklyn that helps immigrants assimilate to New York. We give English classes, we give computer classes. So, between my boards and my books, that's really all the time I have.
Keeps you busy. Yeah, no, I can understand that. And, but if you weren't doing this work, what would you do instead?
If I were doing this work, I would probably be a social worker. I worked for a social work director who was my mentor back before I went to law school, and I wanted to go to social work school. Her name is Frances Gautieri, and she's my mentor. She means so much to me. She's in a nursing home right now, but I wanted to go to social work. I said, I really, really want to be going to social work. And she said, no, you really should be going to law school, which is where you have the greatest impact. So if she hadn't been part of my life, I probably would have gone to social work school, but I'm glad I didn't. But if I weren't doing this, I'd probably be a social worker, most likely.
Mm-hmm. So you've definitely got that streak of giving back and supporting people to raise them up. That's definitely part of your DNA, so to speak.
Yeah, it's definitely part of my credo. I think we don't really accomplish anything without helping other people. That's what I think. I think we're here for that purpose. I think I'm here for that purpose. Otherwise, it's just work, and it's not a calling. And I feel for me, being an attorney is a calling. And for me, being an advocate for people is a calling. I feel I want to be able to help people with the skills that I've acquired and my language skills. All of those things help for me to bring other people up from where they are, especially at work. But in every situation, really, Elizabeth. But especially in their where it relates to the law and work.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. It sounds great. So I know that we've all had some dark days recently, with COVID and many other challenges that have been going on, Black Lives Matter. So what's been the most challenging thing that you've had to deal with in your business?
I talked to another employment attorney about what they're going through on their end. And honestly, Elizabeth, it's the desperation. People right now are really, really desperate. A lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people are, running out of funds. A lot of people have run out of funds already. And I've never dealt with something like this in my life, where I have so much business, but that business also includes category of people who are just at their wits' end. They don't have a job. They don't have money to pay rent. So I've been dealing with a lot of people who need help in the form of funds, right away. And it's been really hard for me, and I've been trying to do what I can to point them in the right direction. As a lawyer, I can only, I can help them with what I can help them with, but I've never seen so much desperation in the stories that I hear, in the people that come to me to seek guidance. And, I've never had clients ask me for money directly, but they do. Now they do. Now they call me and they said, would you give me some money so that I can eat? I've never had to deal with that. And that's pretty dark, I would say.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very sad.
Yeah.
And it's just a reflection of what's going on in the world right now, actually. I mean, not just in New York City, but, in America and throughout the world. It's a very challenging time right now.
It is. And the only other person that, my pastor a friend of mine who's a pastor, he and I talk about it. And he said, this is what I deal with all the time. I send people to him to, get the help, but I mean, I've never seen anything like this in my life. And I hope I hope it gets better, and I hope I never have to see it again.
Yeah, it's, let's hope that things turn around and that we can pick ourselves back up fairly quickly and learn the lessons as well, and just be compassionate to our fellow human beings. I think that's just so important.
And if you can't do something, do something. We all have our limits. We all have the things that we can and we cannot do. But if you are able to, even sharing information, right? And share information. For me, it's impossible for me to give everybody the money that they need, as it would be for everybody. But having the information handy where they can go and seek help, it's also, and that's where a lot of times where I come in, it's because I know some people who might be able to help them. So I've been able to refer them to organizations, and so just do what you can. Everybody needs a little bit of help right now, and we have to be here to help them.
So yeah, absolutely, we certainly do. So Lina, what was the best piece of advice that you've ever received that has really supported you in not just necessarily your business, but also supported you to be a good human being and to do the work that you do?
I once was a person who did a lot of everything. I was a graphic designer, I was a web designer, I worked in a few places, and somebody said, you really cannot be a jack of all trades and feel like you've accomplished anything. And so ever since, I've decided I'm going to be very, very good at this one thing, and I'm not going to do anything else. And a lot of people say, hey, why don't you're an employment attorney, how come you don't represent management employees? And I've decided to just concentrate all my efforts, all my skills into helping working folk. So I'm an employment attorney who only helps plaintiff side, what we call plaintiff side, right? I don't ever represent management. I don't ever represent employers. Not only because it's my proclivity to do so, but it's also a specialty. If you represent, there's a different set of skills with representing employers, right? They have the money, they have the resources. I want to work for people who don't have any of that, and I want to be just as effective for them as if they had paid somebody a lot of money. So it's a skill, and it's an employment law. I don't do really very much of anything else, and this is a really good piece of advice. You do something, you do it really well, and you're all of a sudden you're a specialist. I consider myself a specialist in what I do, but it also helps the people. It's good for the people that I help because they know that in me they're going to have somebody that really doesn't concentrate on anything else but what they go through, their problems. So it was a really good piece of advice because I could be doing a lot of other things, or I have a lot of other interests, but I don't want to. I want to do this and this alone. And I think it's a great piece of advice because you don't really want to be a jack of all trades, right?
That's true.
You want to be.
That's true.
Yeah. So I used to like being called a jack of all trades. I don't anymore. So I think as far as pieces of advice, that was one of the best ones that I ever received.
Yeah, that resonated with you. I hear that. I hear that. No, that's cool. That's cool. So let's just do a little bit of personal information. Tell us one thing that people just may not necessarily know about you.
Well, I'm extremely sensitive, but I'm completely disinclined to show it. So very sensitive, you just will never know because I'm not gonna It's not, it doesn't come up.
Okay. All right. So we'll get off that topic. So the sensitivity is not so there for you. But let's talk about maybe, podcasts or books that you might recommend.
Books that I recommend, you had Romy Newsstand at some point this summer, whom I love. And her book, I can't remember the name of the book. I think it's called You Can Have Everything, Just Not at the Same Damn Time. Is that what it's called?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really good book, and I'd recommend it because she just speaks a language that we can all understand, and it's a book full of just very concrete advice. So I read that. I'd highly recommend it, and I read a lot of self-helpy stuff. A lot of David Hawkins type things. I just recently read Success is for You. I liked it. I'd recommend it. David Hawkins, David Hawkins, who wrote, he's written a lot of things, but he's written a bunch of books about not success, but the things that come with having, being a helper of other people, having to help other people, and what you yourself have to know. David Hawkins.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. And I think that personal development and professional development is always so important for us to move forward in our lives, and something that people need to really connect with. Mm-hmm. So just a couple of questions just to finish us off now. What's the craziest thing you've ever done?
Craziest thing I've ever done. I once flew to Moscow for the weekend. I did. I left on a Thursday night and I was back in New York Monday.
Okay, that's definitely crazy. I'm sure there's a huge story that goes with that, but I think people are going to have to connect with you directly to hear that story.
I think it's all about that Moscow weekend, don't worry. But it was crazy.
It sounds kind of wild and crazy, that's for sure.
The David Hawkins book it's called Letting Go. This book that I just read, it's called Letting Go by David Hawkins, and I don't know why I didn't remember. It was part of my book club. I have this book club, and we read this book, and I thought it was a really, really great book. If anybody's
that's
Letting
great.
Go by David Hawkins.
Wow, there we go. Letting Go by David Hawkins. Excellent. So lastly, what's one thing that you couldn't do without?
2 shots of espresso over ice in the morning.
You're a woman after my own heart. Honestly, I do exactly the same thing. It's the wildest thing, but it's just like, it kind of just works.
Is it on ice though? Do you take it on ice?
I do. I have an espresso machine.
I do too. You have the Pixie. I have the Pixie. I have the Pixie. I put 2 shots of espresso there with a little bit of ice, and if I don't have this, it's just like I can't.
I put a little bit of Manuka honey in mine.
Oh.
Yeah, it's nice. Just a tiny little bit of Manuka honey, because it's really good for you, and it sometimes just takes the edge off the coffee. Anyway, Lina, we could carry on talking for so long. I have so enjoyed just really connecting with you and learning new things about you, which is wonderful. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time, and I want to thank you for your contribution to NAWBO. And for what you're doing for all the people here in New York. It's you make a big difference in the world, and thank you for that as well.
Thank you. And if everybody wants a book, I'll send free copies. It's not a book that's meant to sell. I want to give it to anybody who needs it. So if anybody ever wants a book in English or Spanish, it's just contact me.
All right. Lina Stillman, thank you so much. Take good care. Bye-bye.